Hey gamers, Maniac here with GameAccess.net doing another fail. This fail was a bit of a different one than I usually do. Usually most of the fails that I've done focus specifically about the movie industry's failures, either in front of the camera or behind the camera. I usually don't do fails about the video game industry, and there's a very good reason for that. Because this is a video game channel. And so I feel like the time has come for me to actually talk about a fail for the video game industry in general. And if you've read the title of this post, of what it is, we're going to be talking about the business decision failures of a video game company called Konami. I know that a lot of people have been talking about Konami as of late and has been questioning a lot of the decisions that they've made involving how they've been handling their separation, I'm going to use that term basically, separation, between themselves and the creator of the Metal Gear series, Hideo Kojima, one of the best video game directors in the history of mankind. I feel like Konami has made a lot of bad decisions leading up to that. And as I was planning to do this video, I was actually coming up with a list, and trust me, it didn't even take very long to make a list of just some bad business decisions I felt Konami has made over the past decade, even before they started meddling with the Metal Gear series. Like I said, it didn't take very long to basically fill this notepad up with mistakes, or at least perceived mistakes. And these were just mistakes that I could think of just off the top of my own head. You're probably asking yourself, well, who am I to second guess Konami? What's my background in the video game industry? First off, I'd like to say that I have been writing, about the video game industry probably since I was 16 years old. I've attended at least 3 E3s. I have been involved in my website. I've been directly following the video game industry, the nuts and bolts of the business side of it, at least for the past 15 years. I have a pedigree. I took business classes in high school. I have business background as well. I've never started a business. I have no intention of ever starting a business, but I do deal with this kind of stuff. I know people that have started businesses. I listen to them, and I follow business news quite closely. So I can basically look at analogies and see trends in business decisions and predict, based upon how these decisions or how similar decisions have affected other companies, how your decisions will affect you. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there that will probably say Konami has been making bad business decisions ever since they started meddling with the Metal Gear Solid series. And they're right. Probably in the most recent history I want to start talking about another franchise that Konami has been meddling with in the past couple of years, just off that I can think of. And that, of course, is the Silent Hill franchise. Those of you who don't know, I'm sure many of you do, I know I have Silent Hill fans in my audience. Silent Hill is another Konami franchise. It's considered to be probably one of the best horror franchises in the history of gaming. Some of the games in the Silent Hill series, particularly Silent Hill 2 and probably Silent Hill 3, although Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 4 certainly had their loyalists, are considered to be some of the best games ever made, period. They were developed by a team which I'll simply call Team Silent. An internal team at Konami developed these first four Silent Hill games, and they sold very well, are very well remembered, and still to this day I don't know why some of these games have not simply just been reprinted in their original format. They would make a killing. Sometime after Silent Hill 4 was released, Konami decided to disband Team Silent, and most of the talent behind the Silent Hill games, at least the original Silent Hill games, scattered throughout, and they ended up in other teams. Konami then decided that they were going to continue the Silent Hill franchise by tasking developers from the United States and Canada to make new Silent Hill titles. Silent Hill Origins, Silent Hill Shattered Memories, Silent Hill Downpour, Silent Hill Homecoming. Say what you will about those games, and I'm sure some of them have their loyalists, but everyone seems to universally agree that none of those games could ever hold a candle to any of the original Silent Hill games. At all. In fact, a lot of the reviewers believe that a lot of the symbolism that were used in the later Silent Hill games, the ones that were outsourced, were developed by people that, while may have fans or may have been fans of the franchise of the original games, since they weren't the original developers, there were a lot of concepts that were probably, and symbolism and symbology that were probably lost on them, that maybe this wasn't the best decision. And there was a huge backlash on the more recent Silent Hill titles. People hated them. And they didn't sell very well. The reviews were very poor. And now it seems like there's probably not going to be any more Silent Hill games. This is terrible. Why would Konami disband such a popular team that made such great games and outsource them to other developers that didn't make games as well, games that were as well liked or well received or as good? I'm reminded of the U.S. auto industry that, especially by they were very good at making cars. Americans over here for at least the past 60 years loved the cars that were made by the U.S. auto industry. And sometime around the 90s, the auto industry decided that it was better for them to close a lot of the factories that they had that were making cars here, or very good cars here, because of short-term gains that they could have by building plants elsewhere. And in turn, they produced a bunch of cars that were not as good, that people simply bought Japanese cars or German cars and things like that. I'm just reminded of that. I can't help but think about that story when I think about what happened to Team Silent. Konami, I think that was a very poor decision. And that's just a decision that they made over a decade ago. I think I started seeing an inkling of what was going on here, issues going on here, when I picked up a copy of Metal Gear Solid 3 3D for the Nintendo 3DS. In fact, if you go back through my YouTube archive, you'll probably find a video where I'm actually commenting about the poor packaging. Literally, just the piss-poor shrink wrapping that Konami did for all retail copies that I could find of Metal Gear Solid 3 3D on the 3DS. I'm like, is this? I thought that the games had been opened and then resealed or something along those lines. Turns out they weren't. Konami just had poor packaging when they published the games, or did a poor job shrink wrapping them. I'm like, why would they do that? Later on, Konami would go on to, around the same time they were developing Silent Hill Downpour, they decided to do what I thought would be, at least on paper, a very good decision. They were planning on re-releasing Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Then the game got released. And that game is bad. Not because the games that they based them on were bad, but because their performance was just absolutely horrible. Content features on Silent Hill 3 were just cut. They chose to do entirely new voice acting when everyone loved on Silent Hill 3. And they threatened to do it for Silent Hill 2 instead until a huge backlash happened because of it. Instead, Konami, relented, and they gave the original voice acting back for Silent Hill 2. But since nobody knew about Silent Hill 3, they did new voice acting for Silent Hill 3, and I have no idea why. But as having someone who has seen the original Silent Hill 2 and 3 played and remembering how smooth those games were, and then playing Silent Hill 2 and 3 HD on a PlayStation 3, and how just jarring and how terrible the frame rate is on both of those games, I would think twice about, and some of the cool extra costumes and stuff like that were cut from Silent Hill 3. The soundtracks weren't included as on a separate disc like they were for Silent Hill 3. I'm just like, why would Konami do this? I heard a rumor that Konami actually didn't use Final Code for when they re-released Silent Hill 2 and 3 in HD. They were using some beta code because they couldn't find Final Code. But that theory also means that I know for a fact that Microsoft, as a policy, Microsoft's stated policy is that they will keep Final Code for all Xbox games that they have published. They retain Final Code on all those, at least as a backup. Konami could have paid Microsoft for that code. At least that's from what I heard. This is an unconfirmed rumor, but at least it does hold some water, because I know for a fact Microsoft would have had that code for at least for Silent Hill 2. Konami chose not to pay for that code, or would have chosen, and instead used beta code that was then ported to HD and was completely unstable. Then, after the game was released, they chose not to bother in patching the Xbox 360 version. They say it was as a fiscal decision, but I'm sure that it would have made more sense fiscally for them to patch the game and make it stable, because that would have meant, your game might actually sell. In turn, nobody ended up buying Silent Hill HD once they found that out, and a lot of people who already had bought the Xbox 360 version of Silent Hill HD and could prove it asked for game refunds. All this seems to add to me, at least it was starting to paint a picture like Konami was being very fiscally, they were holding back money. It just seems like, starting with the packaging and moving on through their decisions for Silent Hill HD, all of this was starting to paint a picture like Silent Hill, maybe Konami is broke. Or maybe Konami there's got to be some reason why Konami is doing all of these things to hold back money. Like, they're making these very bad decisions which are hurting their reputation, because they were hurting their reputation. A lot of people saw that they weren't, even though they patched Silent Hill HD on the PS3 twice, they never made the game run at a stable frame rate. The game runs at, like, I don't know, 15 frames, at least even in Silent Hill 3. It had bad slowdowns in Silent Hill 2. I never understood that. I never understood why, even after you patched it, they still couldn't make the game have a stable frame rate. A decent frame rate. Never figured that one out. So, it just seemed like they had given up on the game just after it had released. Don't know why. Probably around 2013, Konami started working on Metal Gear Rising, or started wrapping up on the development of the Metal Gear, or what basically would become Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, this game right here. While it was being done by an outside studio, I can't remember, it was the guys who made Bayonetta made this game, Platinum Games. I enjoyed Metal Gear Rising Revengeance quite a bit, actually. For some reason, and again, Konami called it a business decision, even though the game was made for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, it was only released on the Xbox 360 in English-speaking territories. It never came to the Xbox 360 in Japan. It was never ported over. Again, Konami called that a business decision because it would have been too expensive to localize that game, and they said that there weren't enough Xbox 360, it wasn't enough of an Xbox 360 ownership in Japan as it was to merit, the cost of porting the game over. Gosh, really? You would have had a Japanese and English track already. You would have done that for the you would have done that for the PS3 version, so you already would have had the localization done. You already would have had the code done for basically, because you had a North American release, you would have had the code working on the Xbox 360. What would they have had to have done? Testing the game? QA testing is not that expensive. So you would have had to have tested a Japanese game, for a Japanese team. That's not that crazy expensive. Manufacturing was also cheap. Manufacturing those discs was not that expensive either. This was not adding up to me. But I think one of the first big nails in Konami's coffin, or at least into this whole issue of just bad decisions, Hideo Kojima announced Metal Gear Ground Zeroes, which they said was going to be a game that would lead into Metal Gear Solid 5. And it was going to be done on high-end PCs. It was going to be available for high-end PCs. He wasn't going to say what the game was going to be intended for. It looked amazing when it was first showcased. But Kojima was like, this is going to be our next game, and it's going to be a prequel to Metal Gear 5. It's not Metal Gear 5, but it's going to be Metal Gear 5. And then, a couple of months later, maybe around, I think it was around when the early, not the Game Awards, they weren't called the Game Awards at the time, I think it was VGAs. To be honest, if I was to tell this story, it probably would be an entirely another vlog. Moby Dick Studios came out and says that they're developing a game called The Phantom Pain, and they showed it off, and everybody was going crazy for it. And we later found out at GDC later on that The Phantom Pain is actually Metal Gear Solid 5, and Ground Zeroes is also Metal Gear Solid 5. So, awesome! This is all Metal Gear 5. Amazing, great, awesome, can't wait to play it. And then Konami made the decision to split Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain, even though it's clear when you look at the initial announcement that Ground Zeroes was basically going to be like the tanker mission in Metal Gear 2, or Metal Gear Solid 2. Even though it was clear that it was going to be like that. Anybody who paid $30 for the game knows it was that long. Konami decided that they needed to have product up on shelves immediately, and they forced the game to be separated, and they released the game piecemeal in 2 parts. Even though they charged $30 at least for Ground Zeroes, and that game was probably not even 2 hours long. And it got a lot, again, that was more bad will towards Konami for that. It wasn't released as an episodic game. It was released as a budget retail title, which still had a price tag of $30. And even though it was good, it was polished, it was still a very short game that was being charged a full, mostly a big price for. And it isn't included in Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. I'm sure people would have been willing to wait for it if it hadn't been included with The Phantom Pain, as it should have been. So here's the thing here's some questions that I have. Let's talk about these decisions just around what's going on around the time, particularly with Kojima's staff. Now, at and around GDC that year, I can't remember if this was before, it was just around the time they were wrapping up. It was either they had finished Ground Zeroes and they were moving on to Phantom Pain, or they had announced the Phantom Pain at around the same time. It was going to be one title. But Kajima Team was hiring at this time. They were planning on starting their own studio on the west coast of the United States. It was going to be a separate Kojima Team that were going to be developing games in tandem along with the original Kojima Team in Japan. It was branded Kojima Team. It had Kojima's name on it. The name Kojima Team meant something. We knew that Kojima's name carried heavy weight with it as gamers and consumers. They spent all this money in setting up a studio to develop, we don't know what. I can't tell you what they were working on. I really couldn't. I don't know if they were working in tandem for parts for Metal Gear 5 or I couldn't tell you what they were working on. But I do know for a fact that that studio was operating for probably at least, they had done a lot of, they were hiring like crazy. They were trying to get talent at that year's GDC, for example. Once we knew the Phantom Pain was coming out, they were doing a lot to show off their technology and say, come work for us. Why go to all that trouble if all Konami was going to do was shut that team down? And they did. During, or just leading up to the release of Metal Gear Solid 5, Konami started doing the unthinkable. They started removing all the Kojima branding from the games. They removed Kojima's name from the website. They started pulling Kojima's team, or the names off of the Kojima teams that they were developing. I don't know what happened if they shut down Kojima's team on the West Coast, or if they integrated it, or they just fired. I can't tell you. I don't know what happened to that team, and if you know, please post a comment about it. But why would they? But it just, none of these things made any sense. You go to all this trouble to set up a team, a separate entity, and then you do all this in less than a year after you're setting it up and hiring all these people. And I guess it just comes down to, how do I feel about this decision? And I don't know. I have no privy to any internal memos. And I've usually taken what people have claimed as with a grain of salt at least, and I don't want to reiterate any possibilities of saying, well, maybe this happened or maybe that happened, maybe Kojima got fired. And I don't want to say any of that, because obviously we can all speculate, but I don't know. I wasn't there. So all I can say is that these were just some very bad decisions. It was a bad decision, and I will say this, and I will write this on a flag. Doesn't matter what flag, and I will put it up on a flag post and I would salute it. It was a bad decision for Konami to distance themselves from Hideo Kojima. Why? Because Kojima was not only working on Metal Gear Solid 5, he was working on the next Silent Hill game. And his team had gone to all the trouble in developing a new Silent Hill game, or at least starting to work on a new Silent Hill game with their in-house engine, which they were plugging like crazy. Don't know what they're going to do with that engine now. That they actually developed a playable game, a playable demo for the PlayStation 4 after Gamescom. I think it was Gamescom 2014, if I remember correctly. It might have been Gamescom 2015, but I'm pretty certain it was Gamescom 2014. People found out in about 12 to 24 hours once that demo was released, the PT demo, which people know. Once that demo got released, people found out within about 12 hours that was a prequel story or a teaser for Silent Hills, the next Silent Hill game that was going to be developed in conjunction between Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro, and Norman Reedus was going to be involved as the character. So Kajima Team was working on Silent Hills at around the same time that Metal Gear Solid 5 was. But for some reason Konami decided end their relationship with Kojima, and that would have meant the end of Silent Hills, and it did. Their Silent Hills production was canceled. Guillermo del Toro confirmed it. Norman Reedus mentioned it. I don't know if Kojima himself ever talked about it, but Konami did pull PT from the PlayStation Store. It can't be downloaded anymore. So if you've got a PlayStation 4, back it up. Back it up, because you're not getting that game back. And now it turns out that maybe The Phantom Pain will probably be the final Metal Gear game ever released. Silent Hills is not happening, and it's very unlikely we'll ever see another Silent Hill game. So what is Konami doing? Do they have other teams somewhere that are making another Metal Gear game? I don't know. But I do know this. There has been a lot of negative backlash against Konami for this. For me personally, I outright refuse to buy Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. That's my personal... I will not buy that game. I will not give Konami any money in conjunction with their decision to fire Kojima or separate themselves from Kojima. Out of respect for that, out of respect for Kojima's separation, I will not buy The Phantom Pain. Solidarity. That's all it is. Call it spitefulness, call it whatever you want. I will not buy that game. You can't claim that you're going to make bad decisions because they're going to help you out fiscally in the short term. Because all that's going to mean is that your company is going to go bankrupt in the long term. You're going to drive your company into the ground. Make a small bad business decision here for short-term gains. Make a small bad business decision here for short-term gains. Make a bad business decision here. And let me tell you, they've made a lot of bad business decisions. Whether it be that they're not making the decision to cancel Silent Hills is a bad business decision. The decision to cancel to separate themselves from Kojima is a bad business decision. Going back, the decision to disband Team Silent was a bad business decision. The decision to split Metal Gear 5 into 2 games was a bad business decision because it made a lot of negative publicity. Why go to all that trouble? That's the part I'm not understanding. They went to all the trouble to basically open a West Coast branch, and now it's all done. They went to all the trouble to work on Silent Hills and release the game and announce it and everything else. And now that project is gone too. People were interested in Silent Hills. And I know that, in the short term, in Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain will probably sell pretty well. From what I heard, it's got good reviews. My brother-in-law has a copy. He seems to be enjoying it from what I heard, but I'm not gonna pick it up. As far as I'm concerned, Konami is on my bad list right now, and I'm sure I'm not alone on this. And I'm not saying boycott their products. I'm not saying anything like that. Just do what you want. But I can't for the life of me fathom why Konami would have made all these bad decisions. Is there somebody at the top that's now working for Konami that doesn't know what they're doing? That's the only conclusion I can come up with. That's my guess. This evidence is telling me that. Could be wrong. Maybe I am. But these are bad decisions. These are fiscally irresponsible decisions. And this will hurt Konami in the long term. I know for a fact that a lot of people think of Konami as not something they want to buy products from anymore. Well, Kojima, I say, good luck. I know you'll land on your feet. I wish you only the best of luck, sir. And this is coming from someone who has been a diehard fan of yours ever since the first Metal Gear Solid game was released. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'd like to thank David Hinkle, my super fan, for recommending I do this video. Appreciate you guys watching. If you have any further ideas for videos you'd like to see me produce, this goes for anybody obviously, post a comment below. Join one of my live Twitch streams at twitch.tv/maniac536. I'll probably be continuing with my Final Fantasy VII Let's Play pretty soon. There's going to be another fail in the pipeline right now. In fact, I keep pushing it back. I was going to do this next fail, at least maybe, I have another fail that I have planned, and I was going to do it this time. I decided to do the Konami one instead, based upon the same thing with Pixels. I was going to do it before Pixels. I keep pushing it back. But, yeah, I do have another fail planned for next time, guys. And I have other videos that are in the pipeline as well. So please subscribe, post a comment, like my videos, whatever you want. Join me, tweet me. Visit my website, GameAccess.net. Until next time, guys, this is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Thanks for watching. Goodbye, Kojima. Over and out.